This is Vince Russo, everybody, and you are listening to In Your Head, bro.
Welcome back to In Your Head Wrestling Radio. I am the internet icon, the pride of the pilgrims, the most honest man in podcasting, handsome Jackie Jones, along with my right-hand man, my audio soulmate, the enforcer of the Headyverse.
1-inch biceps, the power goat. Bah! How about that?
Wow, very powerful.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
I'm bringing it.
Yeah, usually you're like half asleep. But...
I drank my first cup of coffee tonight. I'm ready to go.
You drank coffee? Seriously?
No, I'm lying.
Oh.
I'm not that crazy.
I didn't think so. I was like, wow, you're falling off the wagon. And joining us, I think it's the 50th anniversary. Well, definitely not the 50th anniversary, but the 50th time on the show is what I understand. From Kayfabe Commentaries, Sean Oliver, who's now an author. How you doing?
Yeah, imagine that. Jesus Christ, lock up your children.
So Kayfabe stories you're not supposed to hear from a pro wrestling production company owner. It's a long title. So
it's all about the keywords, brother.
Uh-huh. You can't put that in. You definitely don't use that for URL.
No, but like for Amazon searches and whatnot.
Oh, I see.
Plus, who the hell knows what a kayfabe is other than the 7 people that sit and listen to your show every week? So I had to be a little more explicit for mass market, and even when I was writing, you have to consider that issue. If I were talking to you, I could talk in shorthand. I don't have to put any explanation as to why Harley Race is an important individual. But you have to take a second, not too much, but you have to take a second to throw that in there because, your mom might buy the book.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically your mother, Jackie.
Mm-hmm. She won some money tonight, so I think she could afford it.
She did. She won $1,000 on a scratch ticket. I didn't think that would come up on the show.
How much has she spent collectively on the lottery?
I mean, well, it's not a huge secret here on the show, but I don't like to tell too many people so they don't try to knock because it's not my money. But she did win $1 million on the lotteries.
$1 million.
Yes.
Yes.
Here I am ready to bust on her saying she's probably spent 10 times in the past year what she won on the lottery ticket. And I fucking so have to do the job for her right now. Because that is unbelievable. Now, you always hear that you don't take, as much home as you think you do. Is that true?
That's very true. But also in Massachusetts, she wasn't allowed to take a lump sum. So she gets some every year. For
they don't have that cash out option?
No.
Oh, what does it come out to per year?
$50,000, but before taxes.
Oh, God, that's. May I say that's the biggest scam in the world? They bait you with the term $1 million, and they pay you less than a Walmart worker, really.
Why's Virgil calling us now?
Couple minutes, couple dollars. So, well, back to the book, Kayfabe. You're explaining us. Someone might buy the book.
Amazon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is the first chapter still free?
Yes, you can head to Sean Oliver Books and give me your email address, and I will give you the first chapter for free, lest you think I'm some wrestling tool or some basement dweller, undateable, unemployable, and uninspired who could not write. I'd like to send you a chapter and prove otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I like that though, because it's like you just said, like I want a sample of this to see if it's worth my money. So you get you get a free chapter.
Although I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Amazon kind of gives you the first chapter and more in their look inside feature.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I'm talking about, right? If you click the book cover, they show you like the first 25 pages or something like that of the book. So that was more of a pre-promotion thing where I would send out the, hell, I'll still send it to you if you want. But you can also see it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. So what's the response been so far? Not just for the first chapter, but for the entire book.
It's been awesome. It's been great. It's so affirming because people can enjoy the programming. People can enjoy the banter between me and a guest, or the historical retelling of WWE and the little tidbits in the timeline series. But I had no idea whether people were going to give a damn about the machinations of the business of a production company, and the stories. And I mean, I thought it would be very entertaining. My gut said it would, but you never know for sure. I really forced myself to have zero expectations upon release. I didn't even think about it. I wasn't even considering, the royalty, anything. I just said, let me get it out there and put it in the universe, and whatever happens, happens. But I was so pleasantly surprised, and all the feedback on Twitter and emails we get and stuff, shocking things like, me and my wife are both reading your book. We take turns and hand it off to each other throughout the day, and she never watched wrestling. So I don't know what the appeal would be for that guy's wife, but people post stuff like that, and I know people like plowed through it in a day, and someone was recovering from a heart surgery and said that that was getting them through the recovery. So those things are very, very nice to read, and it is very heartwarming, if I may sprout a vagina for a moment. And it is very touching and heartwarming that people have enjoyed the intimate journey that a book can be. I'm happy that I wrote it. I'd like to write more. Maybe I'll be allowed to now.
Yeah. No, you mentioned, you didn't know how many people would be interested in all the behind the scenes intricacies of not only wrestling, but making the shoot interviews. Do you think that goes, the same thing would be true for all different forms of entertainment, or do you think that is something that's only for wrestling fans that find that part of what they like so interesting?
You mean like inside stories? Yeah. No, I think that's why TMZ is popular and all those kind of shows, because people want a peek inside something they're not supposed to see. I guess we're all voyeurs at heart, and maybe a little more so with wrestling, just because for so many years it was a business that was protected. I mean, the entertainment industry, they tell you the movies are fake, but for so long, wrestling was protected. So just those stories alone are entertaining in and of themselves. The lengths that guys went to quote unquote protect the business. We have a show that just came out tonight that just went live actually about 15 minutes ago. You Shoot with Al Snow. And Al says in that show that he would go out to dinner after the matches. He would go out with the head and sit it across from him at a restaurant and order a plate for it, and the head would eat, and he would go to the gym and put the head on the treadmill, and the head would roll off, and he'd go get it and put it on, it would roll off. And I was laughing at him, but he said, you don't understand. He said, my job in that competitive time on Raw, those late 90s, where the ratings were everything, it was to get people to stop at my segment. So some guy and his girlfriend who don't even watch wrestling are out, and they see me with a plastic head serving it food in a restaurant, and they're flipping through the channels a week later, and they see me on TV with the head, they're going to stop and be like, oh my God, honey, that's the nut we saw. That's the crazy guy we saw. So the lengths that guys would go to keep the illusion somewhat real is fascinating. And that's unique to wrestling, or maybe magic too. But who then watches magic anymore?
Well, I went to the Magic Castle a few years ago in L.A., and like you weren't allowed to take pictures or anything. It was like a big no-no.
Really? You know, something you would probably enjoy. Vampiro in his U-Shoot, he claims to have slept in Aleister Crowley's house in Sicily. Any thoughts of doing anything like that?
I do anything weird, just for the experience. It'd be fun to do. Inchman, would you?
I don't know. I'd probably take a pass on that.
You're a good Catholic boy, though.
Yeah. So
much more seedy.
I got the fear of God in me. So.
How about yourself, Sean? Would that be something you would do?
Not any longer. I'm aging rapidly, and my sense of adventure is diminishing. But I am a fan of that slice of life, things with a little outre, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Somebody please look up and see how to spell outre. Maybe it's O-U-T-R-E, perhaps. But the darker side of life, I, as a kid, and I know, we've talked about this before, I was a big fan of horror films growing up as a kid, and fascinated by the darker things in life. Hey, remember Tales from the Dark Side?
Oh, definitely.
It was like a syndicated 30-minute show. Really basement quality production value in it, but the intro,
yes,
and the outro to the beginning and end credits. Remember that, where it was like a forest, and they would go into a negative impression, and it had this creepy voiceover. Fantastic opening to a show. Could never deliver within the in between those two, the opening and closing, but it was a very, very effective opening. Scared the shit out of me. It used to come on at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get off of everything but wrestling. Are you sensing I'm tired of wrestling at all? I'm tired of talking about wrestling. I'm tired of talking about the book. I'm tired of editing this shit.
Do you do the editing on the videos?
I do. It's more of the control freak thing. It's the reason I host it. It's the reason I go on and talk about it. It's the reason I edit it, because the vision's in my head, and the show looks like something in my head, and it's cut a certain way, and the interview has to go a certain way, and it has to be paced a certain way. So I have to do the hosting, the editing, all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't, I saw like videos, but I do a lot of, videos on YouTube stuff. I personally hate editing, so I don't know. For me, that's the worst part of doing any of that kind of stuff. What's that experience like for you to sit down and edit it? Plus, to see yourself there while you're editing.
Well, I'm desensitized to that. I know I'm losing my hair and gaining weight. I don't need anybody else to point that out to me. Thank you very much on YouTube comments. You can save those. I have eyeballs and a mirror. But that doesn't bother me. But the editing is fun and fascinating. When I was in film school, it was great to sit there and actually cut celluloid with a guillotine, old school, as we say. But the pace at which we produce these things, the editing daunting. I mean, I finish one, and 3 weeks from now, I've got another one staring me in the face. So, that has to start getting cut. So that's the thing that's the challenge, is the amount. Some of the joy gets squeezed out of it when, I'm staring at 18 annual full-length releases of 2 hours, which need to be written, shot, edited, advertising, put together, packaged, designed, all that stuff. It may not seem like a lot to anybody who's not familiar with production and how daunting production can be, but 18 full-length releases a year, just a few guys doing it, is a lot.
So how was it like to give over some of that, to have other people host the shows?
The hosting I don't mind because the people that we have doing it are perfect. Like no one would be a better host for Back to the Territories than Jim Cornette.
Right.
So I'm fine with that because the end product is exactly what I want. I want it to be Cornette's show. I don't want that to be my show. I don't have much of a vision for that. The vision I have for it is exactly what Cornette's doing. Vince Russo's new series that we're producing, Vince Russo's Attitude, that's his era. So that's his show. He's an experienced host. He's had a podcast for years. So he's used to being on camera, pacing something, conducting an interview, and I really have to have minimal discussion with him on the set. At Cornette also, I have minimal discussion. We talk beforehand, like on the phone about a week before, and when we get there, I'm mostly watching. I mean, I'm keeping notes. Anthony's keeping notes too while he's running camera, and when we take a break in the show, we'll go up and go over what we have with Cornette, and maybe he didn't cover the arenas in that territory enough, or maybe there's a specific angle or a title run that we wanted to hear him talk to a guest about, and then we would step back out, and he, puts all that stuff in, and we drop it into the show. So no, it's been very easy for me to step aside. Mm-hmm. In instances I did. Timeline is, I've been doing it for years, so I'm used to it. So I'd be more uncomfortable giving up an existing series than creating something new for someone else to host.
Are there still territories left that you guys haven't covered yet?
Yeah, we have a lot. There's Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Memphis.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
Continental. There's a lot of stuff that we want to eventually cover all of them. So we got a bunch that we still have to get.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Jim's talking to me after the book though, so I don't know. We traded some emails. I wanted to get a blurb from him for the back cover, and I sent him the damn thing, and that was about it. I haven't heard from him since.
I was wondering if not just the book. I haven't read the book yet, but if he's still talking to you after the new host of the new series Attitude.
Maybe it has more to do with that than the book, but no. But I mean, Attitude was out when I sent him the book. He did say, what was his quote? Because I know it was bugging him because he had to put it in a response to me. He said he literally blew snot across the table when he read. I post in the book a full bulleted list of every excuse Jim Cornette has given me for not getting me back, the materials, the B-roll to cut into Back to the Territories in time for release, so that I'm up for days and nights before the release. So I put a full list for everything from mice in the attic, refrigerator blew, the fan in the fridge blew, Stacy left a bag at Walmart and had to go back. All the ridiculous excuses I put in there for your enjoyment. And he enjoyed that as well. And he said something like, blue snot on my list of excuses almost excused your being nice to shithead. And that's how he ended the email.
I just recorded a Vince Russo interview. It's not up on the website yet. And we talked about the series, and you could tell right when he's doing it too. He's having a lot of fun, which that's what I was like with the Cornette doing the Back to the Territories. It's always cool to see him, yell and scream about stuff, but it's nice to see him actually talk about something that he really enjoys and just be pleasant.
Yeah, can't we have a universe where some guy from Louisville comes up, has a blast talking about the kind of wrestling he loves, the flavor of the sport that he loves, at a time when wrestling was something different than it is now, but maybe more wholesome in a way, and something really ingrained in his soul, in tune to his view and vision of the wrestling world. And then to have a guy fly out here, a New York guy who also has a blast and loves talking about the brand of wrestling that he loves. Doesn't resemble the other one. You know, it's two different flavors, but they both have such a passion for it. And they both have a place in the wrestling landscape from a historical standpoint. I don't think either one would deny the other one's emphasis and the importance that they place on their particular brand of wrestling entertainment. So for me, people always ask me, you're the one person who can get these, who can work with both of these guys. I just let the guys do what they love. I'm not, and I have an affinity for both sides. I grew up on the product I grew up on the New York product, which got a little goofy at times, but I started watching in the 70s. So I grew up at a time where the illusion was being protected, and the kind of guys that were in the business were different than anybody you'd see anywhere else on the planet. Mm-hmm. But I also got back into watching wrestling. I guess ECW was what really kind of drew me back in after the hockey players and pig farmers and stuff in the 90s. They gave me something I could kind of suspend some disbelief. And you didn't have to suspend disbelief. I mean, New Jack was cutting someone's head off with a machete. There was nothing. There was nothing to suspend. There was a garbage pail being wrapped around Balls' head. So that was like, whoa! That kind of drew me back in. And then from there, what WWE did with it, with The Rock and Austin, and that kind of TV where you just did not know what you were going to see again next week. I so appreciated what that did for bringing me back in, and the intrigue between quarter hours on USA Network and TBS. So I can work with both guys because I dig what both guys dig.
Have you ever thought about tricking both of them to get them in the same room just to...
Oh,
I don't think they legally can at this point.
The world would not be able to handle what would happen. Cornette would, you know what, nothing would happen. Cornette would simply implode. He would become a cloud of dust and a pile of green slime. He would just explode, because it's the culmination of this guy's fantasy. It's like not making it to the bed when you get the cheerleader, He would just explode, and there'd be nothing left. He would disintegrate into a cloud of dust.
A very special edition of Kayfabe Commentary.
Exactly.
I was in Louisville just a few months ago. I thought about trying to find Jim Cornette, but I figured if I did, I'd get shot or something.
Probably, yeah. Just show up uninvited.
Yeah.
I know he seems to me to be the type that would that might sign something for you and then tell you, now you got your signature. Don't ever fucking come up here again without ringing the bell, without calling first. Like that scene in what was the John Lennon documentary where there's some guy who hops the fence and is wandering the property, and John Lennon invites him in and gives him a bowl of soup. He's standing in the doorway, I guess because the cameras were rolling, Lennon even bothered to endure this, but he's asking the guy, what do you want, mate? And he's like, you wrote that song for me, man. He's like, I didn't write anything for you. And he's like, yeah, that lyric, hey kid. But he's like, that could have been about anybody. Are you hungry? You look dirty. Come in, have some soup. And he's sitting there eating soup at John Lennon's table. Why did I bring? Oh, that's because it's going to be you and Cornette. That's
exactly,
right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know his wife a little bit, just on Facebook.
Isn't she? She is absolutely lovely. Stacey,
yeah, she's very good.
She is just a wonderful, wonderful gal. That Stacey Cornette, and boy, a tolerance like nobody alive to put up with that action at home.
Anybody got a question from the chat room or Facebook?
Matthew Fisher from Facebook. Who intimidated you the most in an interview?
What intimidated me more than anything is the fear of no sales. So after talking to Matt Sydal for 7 or 8 minutes and Brodus Clay, I began to shake. Not for fear of what they would do to me, but for fear that I would not be able to feed my family or anybody that was working for me at the time. Not so much guests though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a moment. I'm going to change that for 1 second. There was a moment where King Kong Bundy, I thought was going to snap my neck like a breadstick. The story's actually outlined in the book. We were shooting. I've never told this before. We were shooting his edition of Supercard, and we got to talking about road agents. Now, King Kong Bundy does this thing. Have you had him on the show at all ever?
Yeah,
Jackie?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had him.
He does this thing where he pretends he's mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
And over the phone, it may be no big deal.
Yeah, we met him in person, too. Which
okay, so if he's done that to you in person, then you know he's a large, menacing egg. And he can be scary. So anyway, we're bringing up road agents, and I mentioned to him, I said, how are things with you and George Steele? Because you guys had a little bit of heat. He goes, I don't think I had heat with Steele. Did I? I said, well, I remember from a timeline that we did a few years ago about the year 1986 that he recounts a story where you were walking around saying you were a top guy in the company, and he had to put you in your place and say, you're not a top guy. You had one run, and that's it. And he went off. He went off and on an unholy tirade. I think in the book the way I put it was that I think the tirade that King Kong Bundy unleashed was partially responsible for George Steele's death, just because it was so vitriolic. The energy that came out of King Kong Bundy, I'm sure, had a hand in killing George Steele upon hearing the story. I mean, he went for the jugular, from the colostomy bag, right through everything. So I said, he keeps saying to me, he goes, what did he say? What exactly? I said, Jesus. I said, I don't remember, Chris. I said, I think it's in the trailer. Hold on. And I gave my phone to Adam, one of the production assistants. I said, could you go outside and find this part and just bring it in and play it for him, because it's right there. So he does this tirade on camera, which is horrifying, but I'm very happy to have on video because it's going to be a great trailer moment. That might have just been the trailer. I was thinking of just running a 7-minute trailer, uninterrupted, with just a front title, Supercard King Kong Bundy, and then just a coming soon after the George Steele title. It was so vicious. So Adam walks back in with a look of horror on his face. I said, oh, pretty bad, huh? He said, well, it's there, but it's you should probably listen to it. And you play it back, and George Steele says, yeah, I remember one time Bundy was walking around saying he was a top guy, and Chief Jay said, the whole quote was attributed to Chief Jay Strongbow. Bundy looks at me. He goes, you little shit. He goes, you made me say all that shit. I bet. He goes, you better cut that out. You bet, Sean, you better cut that out. I'm trusting you. He went berserk on me. He said, that is so irresponsible. You didn't even check that out before you told me that. You got me to insult him and his family. It was horrible. I felt absolutely awful. And here I am sitting with another hour and a half to have to conduct this interview. How do you get that back on track after that action? Someday when all these guys are dead, I'll be able to put all this footage out there of these moments, like me trying to steer the conversation back onto, what time did you get in town before WrestleMania 2? As he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and his head is now red. He looks like a red egg.
That's great.
So that was pretty intimidating. His anger was pretty intimidating. That may be the only time, though. That and the those U-shoots that I mentioned.
Yeah. Is that in the? I've seen it. I don't remember. Is that in the final?
Oh God!
Did you edit out?
Oh,
get it out. Okay.
No, I had to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. It was under false pretenses that he said all that.
Sure. No, I understand.
But, I certainly would have left it.
Yeah. And someone who, myself, who lived with a colostomy bag for a little while, they're not pleasant. Not a good time.
No, I'm sure not. And I it was. I mean, I don't know where to go from that, Jackie.
Right. Well, it's a long story there. Last year I almost died, and I had but I'm fine now. So, Inchman,
you're back. You're back in full health.
Yeah, actually, I had. Well, quick stories. I had diverticulitis, same thing Brock Lesnar had. I had emergency surgery to save my life. I had 14 inches of my colon removed, but they, because it was infected from the diverticulitis, they had not reconnected, so I had a colostomy bag for a while, and then I was in the hospital and rehab for several months. And then, but I got better, so they were able to do the reverse surgery and reconnect everything inside. Was it because you had the? It was so life-threatening because you didn't realize you'd had it, and you were eating. I did. Yeah, what happened? Right, I didn't know I had it. I went to the emergency room with a pain in my side. They found what it was. They sent me home, even though it was in the most pain I've ever been in my life, with some pills. Not even any pain pills. He just told me to take inflammatories. And 2 days later, I was honestly dying. Went back in, found out that it tore, and so then my body was filling up with waste, which I was going to die. And so then that's why they had to do the emergency surgery. Jesus Christ! What would I have done with my Tuesday nights? Exactly. It would have been bad times. It was. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it was a lost summer. Good to have you alive. Good to have you alive. Thank you. Another question. What backwoods town do you live in that the hospital said, listen, you have a very serious disease. Take some Tylenol and Tic Tacs and you'll be fine. Yeah, and the thing, there's more to the story because they told me I had to be on a liquid diet, so a clear liquid diet, which is different than liquid diet. So it was like chicken broth and water in like clear Jello. But I also had to take these giant pills for the infection, which clearly said in the bottle, take with a full meal. So it was impossible. So it was just intense stomach pain for taking these giant pills without being able to eat. And so it was just bad. It was bad all around. And then there was a lot of complications. You must have lost a ton of weight. I did, yes. I lost like 40-something pounds. That's the silver lining in it. Is this chat room as dead as it is that I'm looking at, or do I have to refresh my screen or something? Since we moved the show till after SmackDown, it's not as lively.
Yeah, it's been dead.
Holy shit.
It's very late on the East Coast. Ishmael, you have another question. The Facebook is very lively, though.
Yes,
a lot of people posted a lot of Facebook questions.
Let's see. We had one from Al. Oh, he wanted to know. Let's see. Would you consider a Timeline S video with Jim Johnson covering his wrestling themes?
I would actually. That's something that I've wanted to cover for a while. Music in wrestling, and I actually broached the subject with someone who was going to broker Jimmy Hart for us, but I wanted to sit Jimmy down at a piano. I wanted to do the interview at a piano so that when he was inspired or trying to explain something to me, he could bang it out on the keyboard. And I was shocked to learn that he does not know how to play.
Oh.
So I'd always heard about him writing all this music, and I don't know if he maybe writes it on a guitar or he hums it or whatever, but somebody said that he doesn't play the piano. The agent that I was booking him through. So I was a little shocked at that. But yes, I would love to do a Jim Johnston thing, and just to kind of get inside the process. You know, I'm a fan of music myself, so just how that comes about. How many versions does he have to go through before it becomes a final song? Does the talent have any input on what it should sound like? Does Vince do his Vince dance while Jim is playing it for him? All these things that I want to know. So I do have to get him on the air.
Stand back. Have you ever met like Horsecock Express or any of the regulars?
No, I'm hoping not to. I like that there's a barrier between myself and the people that submit questions for. I may have, but he didn't reveal who he was to me. I meet a lot of fans. I take pictures with them. I'll talk about the shows. But if I did meet him, he has not revealed who he is.
If you ever get Bautista on, are you going to ask him about his dick?
Well, I don't have to, because I'm sure a fan will, or a worker.
That's very true.
It would be great to start the show with Bautista's dick coming out and asking how big Bautista is.
I like that idea.
You remember a movie called Mother's Day?
Yeah. I believe it was released by Troma.
Oh no, was it really?
I don't think they made it, but I think they did the distribution.
Early '80s, like '81, maybe '82. Yeah, they shot some scenes on in a baseball stadium. It was actually my high school in my town. My high school's baseball stadium, which I didn't realize until I'd seen it. I mean, I'd seen it like as a kid, but then after I'd seen that field, I saw it again later on. It was like, oh my God, that's Miller Stadium.
Now, speaking of Troma,
what else we got on Facebook? What else? Anybody on Facebook?
Well, I was going to say, speaking of Troma, like it says that you're co-founder and frontman of Kayfabe Commentaries, so you're like Lloyd Kaufman. Who's the Michael Hertz?
Right. Someone I went to film school with actually became employed by Troma, and it's the only place that this guy should have landed at Troma. He made his. I'll never forget his final film. He played it on the Steenbeck flatbed, and it was the stupidest. It was a silent film. We had to do like a 4-minute silent film, black and white. Back when people shot film, like one guy walking down the street in one direction, another guy walking down in the other. They go to the top of a building. Like one guy, they exchange a briefcase, like it's supposed to be some kind of deal, and the one guy pushes the other guy off the building. The thing ends, the class is sitting in silence, and my brilliant film professor, Marcus Eisenstein, he had to be 95 years old if he was a day back then. He's sitting there silent, and he looks at the kid, and he says, his name was Sean also, incidentally. Sean, why don't you be a shoemaker? You can be a cobbler. You can make wonderful shoes. You can make men's shoes. You can make women's shoes. And then just went on to the next person. It was so wonderfully dismissive. I hope as a boss to be able to use that someday.
Excellent. That rules. Inchman from the Facebook. Actually,
Bruce.
You know what?
Oh, okay.
I was just asking, you should ask. I know you have a question about Hannibal. I think you should ask.
I did not see that one. Hannibal on his Hannibal TV channel on YouTube. At the end of the Cold Scorpio interview, he asked Scorpio if Sean Oliver is gay. Sean Oliver, are you gay?
No, I'm not. I'm married with children. But
well, there you go, Hannibal.
That's not alone. I guess an indicative of straightness. I mean, I guess gay guys get married and have
Rock Hudson and stuff.
Does he really? He asks if
Yeah.
I'm gay.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
That's what's on this fucking guy's mind. He's hiring these guys and flying himself around to shoot these videos. He puts them on for free and makes nothing on them. And he's worried about if I'm taking a cock in the ass.
Well, you might be.
Scorpio even seemed a little confused by the question.
Yeah. Before that, it was
Incidentally, did Too Cold Scorpio have any insight into that?
He actually said you were married, I believe.
Yeah. He said, he's married with kids. I think he's straight. So he stood up for you.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, good. I told him to keep it very quiet when he plowed me in the ass in the bathroom after our show.
Oh, gosh, Scorpio? Oh, no.
You could be looking like Brian Hobbs after that.
You thought your diverticulitis was bad. I have a gaping wound on my on the posterior of my body.
Before, I don't know if this will be a theme of Hannibal's going forward, but before that, all the interviews would always get to this part where he would just start talking about Abdul the Butcher and trying to get the guys to incriminate Abdul the Butcher on video. I assume for his lawsuit, but it was always just kind of shoehorned in there.
He had that's right. He was the guy that Abby infected, right?
Yeah. It's a terrible story, but it was always weird. It would just be kind of stuck, in this shoot interview. It'd be like, "What do you think about a man who would, cut another guy?"
Trying to assemble the army to take to the streets and lynch him.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Andrew. What was the question you were asking from the Facebook?
Bruce Briscoe, he wants to know, have you ever considered trying out for the WWE, or have you ever tried out for the WWE?
No. What would they do with me? Nothing. They'd destroy me. They would misuse me completely. I do talk about in the book, there was a time, shortly after working with Dixie, that there was some talk about me and TNA by the folks there, but I instead I pitched a series that I wanted to do for them because they were trying to emulate WWE product, and that was the problem. There was really only room for one. People always said that there were two, there's WWE and TNA. There's really only one. And there was ever only one from the moment WCW went under, so or was absorbed by WWE. So what TNA had to do, to my mind, was to embrace the market that they were alienating, which was the internet wrestling community. And we had a pretty good stronghold on the internet wrestling fan. So I thought that by taking it to the streets, I think was the name of the presentation I did for them, by becoming and having elements of being a shoot company themselves, and stop chasing the kids with foam fingers. And I mean, Cena has them. It's over. That market is covered. What you guys have got to do is, and what I proposed was a series called TNA Unchained, where it was a legit shoot interview produced by us. It couldn't look like this was a TNA production. They would allow us the talent and allow us to do what we do with, let's say, Kurt Angle at the time, who was working atop their card. Let us ask everything. Let's ask about Karen. Let's ask about pills. Let's do a fucking shoot interview. And we'll put it out. Now, from there, you can do whatever you want with it. You can develop an angle out of it. You can start to air clips from it on your show. Just let us. We can bring the internet wrestling fan to your door. From that point on, treat it with respect, keep it real, keep it shooty, and you'll be very different. It's, I guess, kind of what ECW was circa 1995, maybe. And just to be complete opposite from what we were seeing on TV on USA Network. And in more ways than changing the shape of the goddamn ring. Doing it honestly with content. That was my pitch to them. And they liked it. They were going to follow up. We're going to talk more. And they did nothing. I never heard from them again. But anyway, back to working for WWE, or at that time TNA. My point was, what are you going to do with me? I'm the shoot interview guy. I get guys to tell the truth. I get guys to come out of their shell. I use a little sprinkle a little magic, a little fairy dust, Hannibal, a little my fairy dust, and a couple of questions about their cock, and they open up and they tell the fans their deepest, darkest secrets. You're gonna put a microphone in my hand and make me ask John Cena if he's gonna win tonight, like that. You'd have to use me for what I could do, and you could never do that because WWE anyway could never have guys shoot for real. This is a shareholder controlled company. So no, there would be no place for me in the big ones.
Before you even started Kayfabe Commentaries, did you ever have any aspiration to work in wrestling?
Oh God, no. It was. I mean, I had a very singular track my whole adult life, and even from teenage years. I was an actor, and I wanted to make films, so I went to school. I studied film, TV, radio. So it was always in the creative arts. I didn't. Wrestling was just. I loved it as a kid, and kept my eye on it in high school, and then, like I said, in college, ECW and stuff. I kind of got back into it, but never as a participant. Never even crossed my mind until that fateful conversation where Anthony was like, "Hey, you know what nobody's ever done? Alternate commentary tracks for wrestling matches." And then that started this bizarre journey wherein I can have, large men threaten to punch my teeth down my throat, and some guy who likes spending money to hang out with wrestlers and put stuff for free on YouTube say I'm a pillow biter, and all these wonderful, fabulous things. Have my daughter go on the internet and see, Daddy, why are they saying you're fat and bald? Well,
And don't forget that you look like Johnny Knoxville.
That was Gary Hart. Gary Hart, wasn't it?
Yep.
He was wonderful. I got to kind of just go through all that again in writing that chapter of the book covering Gary coming up and doing guest booker and then going home and dying, and just everything that came out of that, and the decisions, when to release the show, and talking with Gary's family, and ultimately, though, I'm very happy with how I handled it and how we handled it as a company. We waited a respectful amount of time before releasing the show, and you couldn't just put it out. I mean, we couldn't ignore the fact that, see, when he died, because we were the last company to work with him, in everybody's article on the internet, we were mentioned as having shot with him right before he died. So we were so closely, and that show was so closely tied to his death, it wasn't just like something we could release that was in the can and not address it. So, but I wanted to do it in a way that it didn't harp on it. There was a nod to what happened, but the show stood on its own merits, and it was a celebration of Gary's life, not his death. And so I asked his son Jason to send me pictures of he and his brother Chad with Gary in life, nothing wrestling related, fishing, and he sent me just the greatest photos of Gary on the phone at home, sitting on the couch, holding the baby, just really personal family photos. And we ran the end credits over those photos, and we dedicated the show to Jason and Chad, and we thought that was a sufficient punctuation mark on that show.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite releases that you put out. He's just a great guy. That's a guy I could definitely listen to for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. But he was as humble as he was smart. He was like, I mentioned in the book, it was like finding an uncle you hadn't seen for a long time, or maybe had never met. There just seemed to be a familiarity with him. He sat and talked to you like he knew you forever, and he was just just a great guy, really great. I mean, we remarked audibly how great Gary was. We didn't talk about how great the show is. Usually, nowadays, we just kind of, Anthony and I just kind of look at each other after a show and go, yeah, all right, yeah, okay, good. Or sometimes we're excited and we're like, yeah, that was great. Mm-hmm. But we talked about Gary after the show and just how impressed we were by him. My favorite quote of the night, also in the book, one of our rather large, burly, heavily tattooed, Harley-riding crew members, Craig, we're walking out of the venue at the end of the night. We leave Gary, and we're walking through the parking lot in the darkness. I'm a few steps ahead. It's quiet, and Craig just pipes up and goes, "Yo, I'm gay for Gary Hart." That totally summed it up.
That's awesome. Hannibal's ears just lit up.
Yeah, Hannibal, you may want to talk to Craig. I mean, he's also married with a child, but, you never know. Mm-hmm, you read a few questions about Scorpio having a big cock, and, that a queer makes.
A serious question, not necessarily about kayfabe commentaries, but with currently all the sexual misconduct stories coming out and really ruining a lot of people's careers. Some rightfully so.
You think this isn't a question about kayfabe commentary?
Maybe it is. If
it's a little close to home.
if all stuff that come out previously, decades before, if that were to surface today, do you think that would do real damage to the WWE?
Somebody asked me. We were talking before we started shooting. A couple of weeks ago on the Al Snow shoot, actually, because I think it had just come out that day that Louis C.K. was, or maybe the day before, Louis C.K. It was just starting to spread. All these reports were just starting to come out about all these different people, and Eric, super agent Eric Sims, was saying, just wait until this hits wrestling. I said, Eric, could it get any worse than we had in 1992 with Mel Phillips sucking on Ring Boy's toes, and allegations from Billy Jack of Terry Garvin sticking a finger in his asshole in the shower, and all the. I mean, it happened. It happened in the 90s. We heard about all of it already, and the people accused, went away for a couple of weeks, and then all came back, and wrestling's impervious from any real damage. I think because of the degenerates that watch it. Quite honestly, it's myself included. I don't know that I'd stop watching the sport because of isolated incidents from people within. The one thing that I piggybacking the Hannibal commentary before, no pun intended, piggybacking.
Mm-hmm.
What is the amount of sexual depravity maybe that goes on in the business? I think on Roddy Piper's show, he was talking about, if you remember in that timeline. I mean, everyone talks about the Pat Patterson revelation or half a revelation, whatever it was,
yeah.
In his show. But I mean, he went on to tell stories about Alfred Hayes would chase him with his dick, swinging it like a garden hose, running after Roddy. I said to him at one point to me, I said, Roddy, was it as rampant as you hear? He's like, oh, you have no idea. So I guess there is an opportunity to hear some more misconduct. Now, nowadays, because they've got to be so careful, speaking specifically of WWE, because it's a publicly traded company, I don't know if today the environment is as freewheeling and cock-swinging as it once was, but I think today they probably are very careful about that stuff. But, I mean, maybe there'll be more revelations from the past. I mean, I don't think it would surprise anybody, the environment that was going on. Well, you had, what's his name on recently? I think Tom Hankins, was it?
Yeah.
You're actually, it looks like taking questions from him on your message board, by the way.
Yes, yeah, he posts questions for I guess quite often. But yeah, he was on. We also had is it Mario? Mario Mancini.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was very.
You guys very did detailed. Some great interviews with him. I think you had him on like 2 times, right?
Yeah. Honestly, he's one of the best guests. Yeah, Mario Mancini.
Yeah, and an unlikely one. People would maybe flip past that if they hadn't been tipped off. I forget how I found out about it, but I listened to them both, and he was great. See, people talk about the best guests for a shoot interview. Do you have to shit on your friends? Yeah, a lot of these these wrestlers, never the big wrestlers, by the way. Another comparison I make in my book between the entertainment business that I've been in for 20 whatever years and the wrestling business for 10 years. The bigger the name, the cooler they are. Usually people taking issue with what we do and the foolishness of something like a U-shoot, let's say, right, where maybe there is some discussion of cocks and whatnot and stuff like that. That the fans send those questions in, first of all. U-shoot, I'm reading questions from fans. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the heroes of the Elks Lodges throughout the country, the wrestlers that are headlining a VFW near you this weekend, who take issue with that because they take themselves very, very seriously. The best guests for, I guess, your content too, and all of our shows, is just somebody who, A, if you're going to be a guest on a show like You Shoot, you can have fun, and B, you're just going to be honest. If we have a force field around us when we speak from a place of honesty. People have asked me, like, oh, did Buff read the book? You know what? Anybody that's going to have an issue with anything that's in my book has an issue with themselves, because I'm only telling what happened. There's very little editorializing. I mean, this thing is written. I wanted it to almost read like a piece of fiction, narrative fiction. I wanted you to relive the stories with me. So, without much judgment, I tell you exactly what happened with each of the talent. You can draw the conclusions on your own. And anyone who's going to take issue with it really has the problem with themselves. And it's not an issue for you to take up with me. It's one for you to take up with your therapist.
Mm-hmm. Being in the entertainment industry, how much had you heard about Harvey Weinstein before it all came out?
Nothing. I mean, I'd done some Weinstein films, but usually, I mean, the majority of all the stuff I do now is voice work, and the majority of my entire resume is looping work, voice work, which is done in post-production. So we come in. Sometimes we'll work with another actor to add some dialogue to a scene, but infrequently are producers there. You might get some like line producers and the directors, obviously, but executives like that, you're not dealing with on a set unless you're a big star and you you're hired by them and you're negotiating a deal with them or something. But the nuts and bolts of making the thing, they're not around.
I'll call her. But real quick, it was about 6 months before that came out. I interviewed Richard Stanley, who directed Hardwire, and they did the documentary about him. He was doing the documentary Lost Soul. It's about him doing the Dr. Moreau movie that went crazy. But anyway, he just started saying, like, he predicted all this stuff was going to come out about Harvey Weinstein, and like I'd never heard any of it. At the time, I was either thinking like, he's kind of crazy or something. But then when it all came out, I was like, oh my God, this guy said all this on in my interview with him.
Oh wow.
The Lexar, the mighty Lexar.
Yes, sir.
You have a question for Sean Oliver?
Out of all the crazy wrestling stories that you covered, what's the craziest you ever heard of?
The craziest story from a wrestler?
Either from a wrestler, a wrestling promotion, or a promoter, anything.
Probably, you hear about the ribs that these guys would pull back in the day, and just, I think it was Mr. Fuji who ribbed Saito, I guess. And Fuji had Saito drive to the town and gave him the directions, and it was like, he had him on the road for like 8 hours or something like that, and was telling him where to go. And then Fuji was going to drive back that night. That was the deal, that Saito would drive to the venue and Fuji would drive back. And so he's got him on the road, telling him which roads to take. And Fuji's basically having him drive in circles around Connecticut for 8 hours. And Saito's none the wiser. End of the night comes. Saito sits down in the passenger seat. He's going to relax now. Fuji's going to drive. He's got the case of beer on his lap. And like 7 minutes later, they pull into the hotel, the same hotel that earlier in the day Fuji and Saito drive. Just think of the level of commitment that takes from Fuji's part. To be in the car for 8 hours, making him drive around like into like Massachusetts and then back into Connecticut to go to a venue that was about 5 minutes away from the hotel, and then reveals it to Saito by getting there in 5 minutes at 11 o'clock that night. That's a phenomenal commitment. An artiste he was. But like stuff like that, probably, to answer your question. These crazy ribs that these guys. Somebody just fell down the stairs, by the way.
Yeah. We'll call the ambulance.
If you call in, try not to knock over bookshelves.
Somebody else, you guys may remember who told the story on our show. Somebody put butane in somebody's asthma inhaler.
I remember that, yeah.
I think Johnny Valentine put butane into the nebulizer, and I forget what worker it was back in the day. Took a shot of it, and it almost killed him. He came at Johnny with a gun. I think it was Johnny Valentine.
I think that's the appropriate response for something like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot you now.
Do to each other's cars and stuff. So that's the stuff that's craziest. It's the stuff that goes on in the ring or out of the ring or with the rats and stuff. That's easy to adapt to. But when you go out to get into your car and your hubcaps are padlocked to like bowling balls and stuff like that. Right. I don't know how these guys dealt with that shit without killing each other.
Yeah. Any of the shit ribs, I don't understand either.
Just wrestlers and shit. Like, why shit? There's so many things you can do. It became a thing, I guess. It became, the ultimate sign of disrespect. I said on one of my shows, can you imagine having to have a company and send out a memo please no longer defecate in Jerry Lawler's crown, or action will be taken. Do you just feel like you're teaching kindergarten at that point? How do you take your own business seriously when you have to send out a memo not to shit in someone's hat?
Anything else, Lexar?
And that'll be it.
All right. Thanks for calling, man. We got Steven in Toronto.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Steven, you got a question for Sean Oliver?
Well, I just called in to listen to the show, but I'll ask Sean. I've been watching some of your videos, and I'm just wondering, have you ever interviewed somebody in one of your interviews and just were so disgusted? I mean, did you ever just want to just, like, were you ever just so disgusted by an interview you ever did and wondered, why did I ever interview this guy? Or are you interested in all kinds of, you'll go through to the interview right to the very end, whether you like the person or not?
That's it right there. And the one determining factor for me is not whether I'm disgusted. I'll be disgusted. I'll have Jamie Dundee kiss me on the cheek 600 times during a show. A sweaty Jamie Dundee kissing my face.
Like you're not into that.
Yeah, no, Hannibal doesn't make me queer. But I'll do that if there is entertainment value in it. Sure. I have a sense when I'm there that something good is happening. Because when I'm sitting with the guest, I have to be, when I'm sitting with a guest on the show, I have to be the fan. I have to be the viewer. So I'm looking at it through, hopefully, objective eyes. And I have a sense of whether what's happening right now is entertaining or not. So the things that disgust me or annoy me is like when I'm sitting with a China, let's say, on U-Shoot, where we're supposed to be having a rollicking good time, and I feel like I'm in a mortuary. It's a cold, tepid interview. Those are the things that bother me. And I'm usually pretty good at trying to break things up a little bit and maybe light a fire under somebody, but there are times I just cannot get somebody into it. Hasn't happened that much, but those are the things that bother me. I don't mind anything that's happening if it's going to be enjoyable for you guys. If it's something that's going to be fun to watch, I'll deal with the kisses. I'll deal with, whatever's going on. But when something's happening that's not entertaining, that really bothers me. Because I have a hard time doing a heartfelt sell to you guys to purchase the product in this day and age where, paying for art is crucial to the survival of our industry, with the glut of podcasts and WWE Network trying to do all shoot programming now. When I feel like something's going to jeopardize that opportunity for you guys to buy something entertaining, that's a problem.
Anything else, Steven?
Oh, no, I'll just listen to the rest of the show.
Thanks for calling, Steven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Enjoy listening. Let's see. Juju B, she wants to know, have you ever done an interview where you felt like somebody was just lying to you?
Yeah, but isn't that fun?
That's my motto. As long as it's fun, it's.
Like, do
I'd rather hear a fun lie
detector now? Like, I don't care whether Tammy really showed Sabu her tits in a closet for 35 somas. I want to hear about it.
I agree 100%.
Let's call it fan fiction. I'm drawing pictures in my mind, and I like it. They're fucking wrestlers.
I agree.
I have to assume that there is a percentage which is a sliding scale depending on who's the guest. But there's a percentage in all the interviews where maybe they're honestly remembering things a little differently than they happened. Let's just say that. But listen, some guys and women, I don't want to keep this only to the boys. Some of the ladies are workers, and they have spent their lives in a livelihood where they're living an illusion. So when you talk to a Tammy Sitch, I am very aware that she's always working. And I don't have a problem with that. This is the business we've chosen, Santino. So that's fine. The day a lie detector has to come out to prove the worthiness of a shoot interview. We're all in trouble.
Bob Cook, former NWA wrestler, he wants to know, why do you always act like you're better than everyone you interview?
Yes, that's what I do. I say I'm better than you, Roddy Piper. Bruno Sammartino, I'm better than you. That's what I do. I do it all the time. I think I remember telling Bruno that I sold out the Garden 47 times, and he only sold it out 46.
Take that, Bruno.
That's what I said to him. I think with Piper, as I was taking him down memory lane, I said, listen, you might have gotten felt up at the Olympic Auditorium in 1972, but I had to blow a promoter in 1972 in the Olympic Auditorium. I'm constantly taking out my scorecard, proving that I'm better than all my talent. That's why they keep coming back to me, is because I make them feel like they're not as good as me. That's why I can get Nash and Corny and Russo and Bruno and all these guys to come on my shows multiple times, is because I make them feel that I'm better than them.
So Al Oop here in the chat room wants to know, would you ever do a timeline on New Japan with Antonio Inoki?
No.
I think maybe that would be a better back to the territories.
Yeah, that's the thing. Timelines are reserved for companies that we can do, 10, 15, 20 discs of different talent, varied talent from different eras in wrestling. I don't. People ask about TNA all the time, but I don't know that we'd be able to have much distinction and differentiation between episode 3 and episode 7 of that series. I feel like I'd be asking the same question about, how's Universal? How's it working over there? Yeah. It sucked when you guys went on the road for a year, didn't it? Yeah, you're right. Back to the Territories is a series reserved for the shows that wouldn't necessarily be able to sustain a timeline, a full timeline series, but within 2 hours or so we can cover enough significant stuff to give a flavor of that particular federation or territory.
Yeah. Would you ever do anything with Dave Meltzer? Like, I don't know.
I would first act like I'm better than him, and then blow him for Hannibal. I would satisfy all my critics in one show.
Oh man,
that'd be hard to pull off. Like showing that you're better than him while you're blowing.
Intended.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
for the reaction, it would be worth it.
I do want to do something with Dave. I can't talk about it yet because I'm hoping it'll happen someday. But I have something in mind for Dave.
Like something specific for him.
Yeah, it's a very specific thing I want him to do. So hopefully it'll come true, and then I can tell you guys about it.
Cool.
Oh, excellent.
I think people. Very polarizing guy, but someone I've listened to forever. Subscribed to the Observer. I think you do something interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand why people are turned off by like the rating, the stars thing. Like,
I even have kind of fun with
stars.
that. Yeah.
Like I get a talent saying, how dare you sit in judgment of me? But I don't agree with the reason that the guys get annoyed by it. Like Al Snow on the show that was just released tonight, by the way. You Shoot Al Snow, available at KayFabeCommentaries.com. A trailer forthcoming. I guess I'm realizing there's no trailer for it yet. It doesn't matter to me that Dave never worked in a ring. It's just very hard to put a star rating on any art. And I think wrestling is an art. When you're grading it like that, you're grading the art of professional wrestling. I still don't know, and I get ballots for them all the time as a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and I don't know how to vote for a best picture or a best actor, because it's something that can't be gauged. It's any art. You can't say my value system for this is the be-all, end-all. So, I kind of bristle at that. I don't think, though, that you can't cover wrestling or have opinions about wrestling if you weren't a wrestler. That's silly. Then I couldn't have an opinion about the NFL game that was on the other day. And I mean, I know from my physique, it's a shock. I never played in the NFL, so it would be silly to say one can only have informed opinions about what one has participated in. Yeah. I could be a historian and study war and have a vast amount of knowledge and some very cogent and formulated opinions about World War I without ever having fought in it.
Sure. It's like if you go to a restaurant, if you don't like the food, it's not like, are you a chef? No, and just eat it and say it's good, or it's kind of silly.
Yeah, exactly. Eat it and shut the fuck up.
So you get the Al Snow. What is that? Was that a U-Shoot? The Al Snow one?
It's a U-Shoot, yes.
U-Shoot, cool. And now, what percentage do you say people buy the physical copies or get the streaming version?
It's moved more towards digital exhibition, whether it be the on-demand stream that people pay for and can watch on Roku or on their device. We also offer downloads now, KC downloads, so people can download something directly to their device. That's very much the preferred method. Now, I do have to say, I did do a study last year about what kind of titles retained higher percentages of DVD sales versus digital. And the more the U-Shoots, okay, the U-Shoots and shows that are not historically rooted, okay, which would eliminate the timelines and do more digital, a much higher digital percentage than, almost 3/4, to a timeline which is almost 50-50. And in a couple of cases, the DVDs were as much as 60%. I think there's something to the collection, holding the collection of timelines on your shelf. All those spines of the DVDs lining up in a chronology of, 10, 20 years of the history of a federation. People want to hold that. So the physical product sells higher for series like that than they do for the average U-Shoot. Now, a U-Shoot with someone like Cornette, that does retain a higher DVD percentage, just because I think a lot of what we're talking about in that episode is wrestling related. So kind of the frivolous dick talk that Hannibal enjoys with Too Cold Scorpio, that type of stuff, I think has a higher digital percentage than the historic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Weeble here in the chat wants to know who is Sean's Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
For me as a host, or for their contributions to the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, I'm not sure who he means. Either way, I guess.
For me as a host, it would be Cornette, Nash, Russo, all the earners. I'm giving you the top earners right there. Russo, Nash, Corny, and I love Sullivan, JJ.
JJ's really good,
yeah. Tom Hankins.
He'd be good.
What's that?
He'd be good. It's weird. The name value's not there, but it would be it would be a good product.
It may. It's a great punchline. I'm gonna roll with it for the rest of the. As I posit that I'm better than him.
It was Bob Cook who said that. Bob Cook.
No relation in any way to Tim Cook of Apple, is he? I'm going to be much nicer to him if he is.
I don't believe so.
No, I wouldn't say so. No.
Yeah. 518 area code. Who are you?
This is Frank from New York.
Frank from New York. You have a question for Sean?
Yeah, I have a few just regarding the content. I'd like to know whether there's any guest bookers in the works, as far as just any upcoming editions.
I wish there were, Frank. We're running out of people.
Yeah.
I'm joking, but it is kind of true. Who do we have left to get on? I want Bill Watts. Oli, I'm told, is probably not going to be a possibility anymore, just from a health standpoint.
Yeah. He would have been fantastic, though. But
yeah, that's there's some omissions from that series that bother me. Dusty, of course, who passed away before we had a chance to get him. But how do you do a series about the most brilliant, not even brilliant, just profiling the booking minds of wrestling and not have had Dusty Rhodes on? So that's a big gap in that series. Bill Watts, like I said.
Someone asked about Terry Taylor doing guest booking. Did he ever?
We had him. He did it.
Mm-hmm.
He did it.
Would there be any possibility of a Jim Ross or a Paul Heyman later on down the road?
Heyman, yeah. Heyman would be great for that. JR, less the creative end than something like an Office special. What I'd really like JR for is a year in Timeline WCW.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even WWE. I mean, he'd been in both. But I would certainly do. I'd certainly do JR. Hannibal, I would certainly do. JR.
Oh, that's a slobber knocker. But what about Sandy Scott? He was a booker, wasn't he?
I believe Sandy.
Oh, you know what? George is gone, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because there was a chance, there was an opportunity for George Scott some years back, and I saw a shoot interview that somebody did with him, and he couldn't remember a goddamn thing, and I was so aggravated because, I mean, here was a guy who. This guy was largely responsible for the first WrestleMania. I mean, he was the booker at the time. I mean, he was brought in, I think, just a year or so before that by Vince. So he would have been able to comment on a very important and crucial time in wrestling history. And I was watching the interview, and I guess it was just age, but he was given very generic answers, and it seemed like he didn't remember a lot of what he was being asked. So that's another lost opportunity now that I think about it, George Scott.
Yeah.
Who's your highway in the chat room brings up Jim Herd.
I'd love to talk to Jim Hurt about
I
what
think
the
that'd be great.
hell was going on.
It's almost like a real life disco.
Just the ding-dongs. Just take the ding-dongs. You don't even have to talk about anything else Jim Hurt related other than the ding-dongs.
But I
There you
remember
go,
watching
Hannibal.
that as a kid.
It's all about the ding-dongs.
I do miss that kind of stuff, though, in wrestling, where it would just be this totally oddball gimmick that would just come out, and then you basically never see it again. But that doesn't really happen anymore.
Well, there was a reason.
I still kind of get a kick out of it. Anything else there, Frank?
Well, actually, a good segue for WCW timeline. I know Sean has mentioned in the past about having Rick on. If that would be the case, what year would he use him for WCW?
That's a good question. Rick is a name that, see, if I got Hogan or I got Flair, they would have to have, remember, like a very special edition of Different Strokes, right. Like maybe the 1 hour one where, Arnold and his little white friend with the red hair get invited to the guy's house and he puts on naughty videos, like that edition. There'd have to be a very special edition of Timeline. It would almost have to step outside the chronology, and I don't know, just off the top of my head, maybe be something like Timeline History of WCW, the title, and maybe just do a show with Rick about his title reigns in WCW. He's just too big a name just to cover, to think that 1 year would be sufficient. Same thing with Hogan. Like I would want to sit down with Hogan and talk about the entire arc of what happened there from January 84 to 88. So I guess that's my answer. That I would do something do something special with them.
Well, I do have one final question. What would actually be the time frame as far as bringing Bruno back for the 70s? I'm sure everybody would be really interested to hear him cover 1970 to 1976.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you heard me say that elsewhere, but that's probably. I would like to do that. Let's just say there are people around that could cover a year here and there, but in WWF, I guess it was, in the mid-70s, very few people stayed around for a whole year. They were in and out on 4 or 6 month runs. So we tried to put together a list of people that would be able to do a year. And, we're limited, obviously, by who's still alive, and then who was there for a year. Strangely enough, Kevin Sullivan is one of the names that's attached to a year for us, maybe 76. I mean, he was working as a I don't know if it was a jobber exactly, but certainly he was way down on the card, and he was breaking in. I remember telling stories on air about watching Vince Sr. book, but I think it might be best to just have Bruno do it. He did such a great job with the 60s. Maybe have him do the run straight up to Superstars edition, which was 77 and 78.
Anything else there, Frank?
No, that'd be all. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks for calling in, man.
Mm-hmm.
You have to mention that Al Oob here has corrected us. It was Arnold and Dudley, not the redheaded kid.
Okay. Oh, you know what happened later on, that redheaded kid? I think they...
when Arnold's not cute.
Mr. Drummond adopted the Sam. Yeah. Sam, the troubled and today would probably be classified as autistic. Half brother.
Yeah, once Arnold's not cute anymore, then they needed a new youngster. And it's always a kiss of death.
He's cute. You you'll be talked about all over the internet.
Very true. Very true. Al also says that the bike shop guy was the worst pedophile ever. So I don't know if he has a list of pedophiles.
It was a bike shop that they were. I just remember an edition of and I remember what the guy looked like. He was a big, doughy, old white guy.
Yeah, I think he was from WKRP in Cincinnati. He was like the boss.
You might be right about that.
Man, that sucks. Though. I mean, then he's just going to be forever known as that character.
Yeah, typecasting. When you play something very troubling, it's hard to get that out of people's minds.
Yeah, and I remember that it is the friend character, because they couldn't have the character like Arnold get molested or touched, because then it kind of ruins the whole show after that, because it's like your main character was had something bad happen to him, so that has to happen to the recurring character.
Right.
Poor dude.
That's correct.
It's a very bizarre question. Someone wanted to know if there's a coincidence that your initials for Kentucky Kayfabe Commentaries is also Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, it's not actually. It's KC. Kayfabe
That's very true.
Word. So people tend to write it as KFC. I don't know why, but it's very clearly a K and a C.
Yeah.
Logo's a K and a C.
Brianna's rule this, by the way.
Well, it's not a bad idea. I mean, it's an association, right? It's an easy mental trigger for people.
Are you a fan of KFC?
You know what? Not so much. Not so much. And
really?
And not so much a fan of KC either lately. It's a lot of work, and I'm exhausted. No, I prefer... are you a fan of junk food, Jackie?
Me not so much. Inchman's been.
You better believe it. You think you're better than me because I like KFC, eh?
No, that's cool.
Exactly. You'll be accused by Frank Cook, the former WCW champion.
Which one you were saying you preferred, though? Did you prefer another place?
No, I think I like a good Big Mac. McDonald's is a slice of Americana, so a Big Mac and a Coke, and you're practically sucking Uncle Sam's dick if you're eating that.
I don't. There's not any fast food restaurant in the town that I live in. We don't allow them.
And your hospital told you to basically eat bonbons instead of. So where are you exactly?
A town called Sandwich.
In Massachusetts?
Yes, it's on the Cape. Yeah, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Near the old Cape Cod Coliseum.
Oh, okay. So you're out in Cape. Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Good. Yep. I was out at Nantucket once. Which was
pretty cool.
rather lovely. Actually, in Nantucket,
There's a little rhyme about that.
The concept of U-Shoot was hatched.
Really?
When I was on vacation in 2007 out there in Nantucket. Just a little trivia.
It's pretty
for
cool.
For you people that write me and ask why I wore glasses on the Jerry Jarrett guest booker and never on another one, don't know that I have an answer for that. Maybe my contacts were left home or something. I don't know. People study.
That's very cool, actually, that they pay so much attention. Songman is on the line. Songman, do you have a question for Sean Oliver?
Oh, no, I didn't know there was a guest on tonight. I apologize. I'll call back.
Singing something.
You were on hold, for a few minutes listening. You didn't realize you were there.
Listen, Songman, don't worry about it. Wouldn't want to put you out. I'm not going to take much more of your time. Jackie will be dismissing me shortly.
Exactly. Do you have a song for us quickly? Do you have a song for us?
Yo, what was his name again? I missed it.
Sean Oliver of Kayfabe Commentaries.
Okay, Sean Oliver. Hi, my name is Sean, and I just want to hear John sing a song because I want to just sing along to make the world know that I'm very strong. Once he hits that big gong.
Boom! Hit the gong, Sean.
Thank you, Songman. That was amazing. Wow. All right.
Jack, you put on this guy Frank from New York before, who sounded like an intelligent, normal guy who I might run into tomorrow at work. And the show was not what it used to be. But I think we're right back on track, Jack.
I was invited to Songman's birthday party recently. I couldn't make it, unfortunately. So, where can I think people know, but where can everyone get the book?
The book is available at Amazon. If you go to Amazon, just search for Kayfabe or my name, Sean Oliver, and we should be at the top of the list of either, I would hope. And it's also available on Kindle if you enjoy reading on the Kindle. And I am finishing the audiobook currently, which is like giving birth. And that's going to be distributed by Audible. So if you have an Audible account, you'll be able to get it. And I think Audible also sells on iTunes. You'll be able to purchase the audiobook on iTunes. So I recommend you getting a paperback version, because let's face it, folks, we have to read. We have to continue to keep the book industry alive, and then get the audiobook so you can listen to me as you read it, and engage all of your senses.
I am actually a fan of audiobooks.
It's the only way I can read now. I love a book. I love the tactile nature of reading. But I'm just so busy all the time. That's the only way I can get through a book or so a month is just to do the audiobook.
And all the, and you're a good talker, so I assume you'll read your book well, because that could really make or break an audiobook. Then he's reading. I
think I'm doing well with it. It's so much talking that it just starts to sound the same. But anytime you hear the author read, you're getting a facsimile of his intention or her intention when she wrote those words. So that's either a great thing or a bad thing. If you prefer to do all the interpretation on your own, then obviously you shouldn't be listening to a goddamn audiobook. But if you're going to listen to them, the ones that are read by the author, I find to be much more entertaining, much more conversational, because they know the intention with which each word was written.
I would agree. There was one exception, is Stephen King does not read his own material very well.
Which one, on writing?
Yeah, just in general. Usually the Stephen King ones where he's reading his own books are not. Oh,
I didn't realize he read his own fiction. He's got a book called on Writing, about the craft of writing fiction, and he does read that one. And it doesn't bother me.
I've not heard that one. I've just heard a couple of his fiction novels, and it was different. There was one last question I wanted to ask here. Someone in the chat room, who's your highway? He wanted to know if you're going to do a part 2 on Teddy Hart. That was one of his favorites.
I don't have one planned, but what would be left for me to talk about with Teddy? Teddy's got to go make the news a little more. Teddy's got to go for the next 2 years. Go and give me plenty of stuff to talk to him about when we bring him back. That was one that someone was just asking me about that today, and I think what they said was, "Well, I know more than I need to now about going into the business of prostitution, selling marijuana, and training cats." And that's probably the only time anyone would ever utter that sentence.
I would agree. Apparently, Al Wilson just updated us that Teddy is in jail right now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. No.
Is it for the thing in Texas that he talked about on our show?
I'm not sure.
Hopefully that doesn't get subpoenaed.
Has anything ever been subpoenaed? Any of your interviews ever been subpoenaed or anything?
No, fortunately, in the broader sense, no one gives a shit about wrestling. So, nothing important enough in the world has happened that's been covered on any of our programs to be subpoenaed.
Yeah, we did think our Rock and Roll Buck Zumhoff might have. It didn't, but looking back, it's a very awkward. It was awkward at the time, but after things came out
did you guys cover any of the?
Well, we had him on the show, and he put his daughter on the phone, and he's like, "That was my daughter, the Virgin, and she's a wrestler." And he just kept going on about how she's untouched, and that's her gimmick, was she's the Virgin. And we were just kind of freaked out anyway. And then it was just like I don't know if it was even a year later, it came out, that was the daughter that was being molested. And then if you try to listen to that interview now, even at the time though, it was clear it was not right. It was very bizarre.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's when I actually took off. I took off the YouTube page.
Listen, it's history. Leave it
up. We Ben-Wad him.
Yeah, I always feel bad because on Facebook, if you put up a picture, a lot of times it'll do the face recognition. And whenever I put up the picture of Rock and Roll Buck Zumhoff when we were interviewing, it always do the facial recognition, and it would pick my brother. And
I was going to say Shelley Duvall.
Happy birthday, by the way, to my brother. He turned 50 today. But
turned how old?
50, the big 5-0.
The big 5-0.
Yeah.
We're all going to get there, Jack. You're not there yet, right?
No, I just turned 40. 40 was a very bad year for me. But
you're a child.
41's been a lot better. But anyway, it's always great to talk to you. I'm actually really looking forward to reading the book, not just because you're here on the show, but I'm really looking forward to it. And thanks to Mike Carey.
I enjoy it. Like I said, I was very careful. I put great effort into having you guys live these stories and really get a sense of the people that I'm talking about. I want you to feel like you're in the room, and I want you to feel like you know these people a little bit. And I spent some time in doing that, and hopefully came across so far, by all accounts. It seems successful from the reviews I've seen and whatnot. Certainly, there's at no point in the book do I feel I'm better than anybody, nor do I write that I'm better than anybody. Mm-hmm. But I think you'll enjoy it nonetheless. Let me know what you think.
Definitely will. And we'll have you back sometime after we both read the book.
It'd be good. I'd like to do this show more than once.
Yeah. I think it'll work out. I think there's good chemistry here. I tried to get some dirt on you from Vince Russo, but he said you were too nice of a guy.
What did you ask?
I just asked to give me some dirt on Sean Oliver.
Oh, okay. Wow, you'd be a great interrogator. You sure you've never worked for the FBI or the CIA? So you got any dirt for me today? I'm in the business of dirt, you know.
Start squilling, you snitch.
All right, guys, I'm going to go suck a cock now. It's been nice talking to you.
You as well.
Hannibal, be well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
I'm sure he's listening.
Hey, this is the Disco Inferno, Glenn Gilberti, former WCW TV champion and Cruiserweight champion and professional VIP wrestling podcast guest, and you're listening to In Your Head.